Bob Labbe. Great conversation with Bob. An engineer at heart, and loved math and science in school. This was in the late 60s when he graduated high school. So he went to Georgia Tech, where they had a co-op program where you work for a semester and go to the university for the other. He said it was the toughest thing to get that degree in his entire life. Just the way they were so regimented and tough. He had a 79.9 in a particular subject, and he was not awarded the B. And there was lots of military there, so there was plenty of structure and just a great conversation. And he went into air pollution control after that. I have known nothing about that area. It seems like a daunting task. He was in that industry for 55 years. So it was worked for a company, bought or created some other company, sold them, created another. And then he retired and he failed at retirement. So he came in and out, and he saw an issue where a coaster, where you rest a drink on would stick to the drink and ruin his tie. So he came up with an invention there. And then after my heart, he has this method of how to putt. And he has this whole way of what's called an IPF of if you're a golfer at all, how to measure how you're going to putt. But just a great conversation with Bob. Really enjoy the way his mind works, and get to talk about some of my passions. One of my passions as well, which is golf. Bob, thank you. And thank you for watching and listening. Really appreciate it. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz, and here's my 45-second introduction. After starting my business in the 90s, I started developing poor habits of eating in my diet because of working way too much. Before you know it, I found myself 340 pounds. The doctor told me if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. Took the next 7 months, lost 130 pounds. People think there's some secret. Ask me, how'd you lose that weight? Like there's some secret. There is no secret. How'd I lose the weight? Just one word: discipline. I've had other successes in life, and I attribute them all to discipline. Now, I'm not the king of discipline, but I believe that it can help all of us. Friends, colleagues convinced me to start a podcast. The podcast mission: how do we better ourselves and society? I talk to interesting people in health, fitness, sport, wellness, business, technology, science, art, and culture. And I eventually ask them how discipline plays a role in their life. Podcast vision: growth through learning from others. Excited to talk to you, Bob Labbe. Thank you so much for your time. I heard you say that Georgia Tech was the hardest thing you ever had to go through.
Exactly.
Why?
Well, back in the days, I went there between 63 and 67 and graduated in 68. And those were the years when, the great space race was on, and there was a great demand for engineers. And Georgia Tech is a very difficult school.
In this fast-paced MSP landscape, how do you stay ahead? Introducing MSPinfluencer.com, your ultimate hub for MSP news, insights, and community connection, powered by Forza Dash. More than 75,000 MSPs subscribe to our MSP Influencer Pulse weekly newsletter, staying informed and ahead of industry trends. Tune in to emerging podcasts from Joey Pinz and leading MSP voices, offering essential tips, powerful insights, and success stories. Explore our multi-authored blogs, crafted specifically for MSP leaders, delivering fresh perspectives and actionable strategies. Celebrate excellence with the industry-leading Forza Dash MSP Influencer Awards, recognizing innovation, leadership, and impact in the MSP community. Join thousands of MSP professionals who trust MSPinfluencer.com to grow their business and expand their networks. MSPinfluencer.com, where today's MSP leaders connect, collaborate, and conquer, all powered by the Forza Dash platform, helping MSP vendors work effectively with MSPs and helping MSPs grow. Bob, could you bring the microphone a little closer, just a little bit closer?
Sure. How about that right there? Is that better?
I think it's a little better, yeah.
A little better, okay. Yeah, Georgia Tech's a difficult school. The reason the curriculum is pretty difficult, but the professors are very, very strict. Okay, and for example, if I had a professor one time, I had a 79.9 average. Okay, and I went to his office before final posting of grades and I said, Professor, would you give consideration? I know I'm 1/10 of a point away from getting a B. Could you round it up to a B for me? And he said, no, sir, you got 79.9. You get a C. And that was kind of the example of the mentality at Georgia Tech during those years. Now, I think it's softened up a little bit, but I still think the curriculum in the engineering school, now they've added a lot of schools that have made it more of a university than an institution. It used to be the Georgia Institute, so now it was truly an institute. And I found the 5 years, I study 6 hours a day, 6 days a week
Wow.
as the norm. Okay. And I got I got through with a B minus average after 4.5 years of effort. So as far as difficulty and time preparation and studying, I mean, it's most everything else in life has been uh, challenging, but never quite that difficult.
And you think it was more difficult then than it is now?
A touch. I mean, they took away the rat caps, which was a freshman coming in. You wore a rat cap to distinguish yourself from upperclassmen, and there
Wait a
was
second. You had to wear a certain hat if you were a freshman?
yes, you wear a little beanie rat cap with a bib on it, and you recorded all the football scores on it. Okay, and you had to wear it around campus all the time to distinguish yourself from the upperclassmen.
Huh.
Okay, and that was part of the deal. And you know, it was a pretty disciplined, regimented school. A lot of military people went there during World War II and the Korean conflict, and because of that, the military presence there. I was in ROTC there, and there was a strictness and a structure at the school. I still think it's still there, but it's somewhat relaxed because of the new world we're living in.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting how the presence of the military kind of creates that structure and almost rigidity.
Yes, indeed, indeed. A lot of
And
Air
you,
Force, a lot of Navy, a lot of
mm.
Marine people came there to get their master's degrees, and yeah, it was a structured military environment, you might say.
And your interest, excuse me, your interest in engineering before going there, was there one?
Well, you know, when you come out of high school as an 18-year-old kid, I was very good in science and math. Okay, and my mother, we didn't have any money, and my mother ran down the fact that Georgia Tech had a cooperative program where you could go to school 1 quarter and work 1 quarter.
Oh wow.
And so that's how I got through Tech was on the cooperative program because I would go to school for a quarter and then they would send me off to like I went work for Georgia Power and Florida Power and Light during the co-op quarters, and that would make me enough money to pay for my tuition
Mm.
and matriculation fee for the next quarter. And I worked my way to school, and that was the way I got through
Hmm.
because there was no money to be spent on college.
And your interest, so you were good in math and science, but engineering, you just kind of learned to love it in the university.
That's right. I mean, because when you're good at something, it comes
Yeah.
kind of natural, and if it comes natural, it's fun. And so that's engineering became natural to me and fun to me, and I carried it through 55 years of being in the air pollution control business, always solving problems, define the problem, look at the possible alternatives, build a prototype, get the right solution, and take it to market.
What should we? I mean, talk to me about the climate of the even the industry of air pollution control in the late '60s, early '70s as it is now. Is there still the same issue? The technology has changed, that's for sure.
Well, it's always constantly improving, but you know, a lot of people. First of all, let me just say this: 80% of the pollution in the world is created by transportation.
Wow.
Trucks, buses, cars, airplanes. It's all those greenhouse gases. 20% of the pollution in the world is caused by power plants and industrial operations.
Hmm.
I lived in the world of the industrial world, but what makes the industrial world so predominant in the eyes of the average citizen is they see these big smokestacks billowing out all these, whether it's steam or it's pollution. It's so uh, in your face
Hmm.
that the public believes that pollution in the industrial world is where it's happening. And it is, and it is concentrated because I'm from Akron, Ohio originally, and we were in the rubber industry, and right next door to us was Pittsburgh in the steel industry. And I spent
Mm.
most of my career working between Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Illinois, and all the big industrial states where steel was produced and cement, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I think that the Clean Air Act of 1970 is what really was the motivating factor for all industrial and utility plants to take the next step in providing abatement to pollution, knowing that previous to the government intervention in 1970 with the Clean Air Act, companies, cement plants and power plants, they were putting electrostatic precipitators and bag houses in their plants long before the government came along with the 1970 Act. But this act of 1970 required all industrial companies to reduce their pollution, which I think was a very good thing for this country because
Mm.
we are the cleanest country in the world.
1970, that was Nixon administration, I would think.
That is correct. Nixon administration. Yeah.
And so then they began a process. The act would actually test some of these firms and then fine if they were beyond certain measurements and metrics.
That's correct. As a matter of fact, my first company, after I left American Air Filter, which I worked for 5 years in Louisville, and they gave me the training and know-how to, to function successfully in the air pollution control industry. But I started my own company in '72. And the first company I started because of lack of funds was a testing company. And
Mm.
my partner and I would climb up smokestacks, and
Wow.
we would test for particulate and SOx, all these different gases and stuff. And then we would write reports and send them to the customer, and who in turn would send them to the pollution control agencies for compliance. And that's how we started out, and then we got into the fabrication business. Then we started building bag houses, and then we started building systems, and we grew the business very quickly, and spent 55 years doing that. It was a lot of fun.
Wow.
Matter of fact, Joe, I tell people I had so much fun in my career, I didn't ever feel like I really worked.
Good for you.
Yeah, it
That's
was just
that's the
it's
definition of
labor of
success.
love. It was a
Yeah,
labor of
yeah.
love. Yeah.
So how does one begin? I'm not an engineer at all, Bob. How does one start to clean the air? My goodness, what an undertaking.
Well, of course, a lot of the technologies were already pre-established even before the government got involved mandating compliance with certain standards. So, yeah, and you get involved with the big three companies in air pollution control in 1970 were American Air Filter, Wheelabrator Fry, and Research Cottrell. Research Cottrell was the electrostatic precipitator company. Wheelabrator and American Air Filter did both bag houses and electrostatics and mechanical collectors, etc. So guys like us that came out of engineering schools, they knew we were capable of comprehending the technology which they
Mm.
taught us. And the reason I went to work for American Air Filter in the first place was they were the lowest job offer I got in 1968. I got 23 job offers in
Wow.
1968. It wasn't because I was unusually bright. It was the fact there was such a demand for engineers back then. And
Hmm.
so when they told me, hey, I said, I'm very interested in the air pollution control field. I wrote a little kind of a semi thesis on it when I was at Tech, and I said, can I get into the air pollution control division of American Air Filter? And they said, yes, sir. And they have a 6-month program, and they taught you about air pollution control, heating, ventilating, air conditioning, steam traps and valves. They took you across the street to their fabricating plant. They showed you how to fabricate steel. They took you to the legal department. They took you to the testing department. You learned all these facets of the business. For 6 months, I was in a 40-hour-a-week training program that taught me the practicalities of the engineering field I wanted to participate in. And whereas Georgia Tech is somewhat theoretical, this gave me the practical tools to proceed in life with some real hands-on knowledge.
Hmm. And like you said, then when you love what you do, the time just goes by quickly, 55 years. So you built that company up, then you ended up selling it, and then you just can't sit around, Bob. I got a feeling you're not good at retiring.
I'm not. No, I've retired 3 times.
So your
Yeah.
first endeavor was an interesting one to make. I believe it was your first was kind of coasters.
Well, no, my first was an air pollution control company back.
Sure.
I started in 1972, sold the first one in 78, started the second company in 81, sold it in 97, retired for six years, started the last company in 2003, and retired it from it in December 31st of 2023. So I did 20 years in that one.
Wow.
So it was a lot of fun, and then it, just at the end of retiring in 2023 is when I was at my daughter's house. We were getting ready to go out to dinner. We were all dressed up in our nice clothes, and I was having a cocktail, and she gave me a coaster, and it was a leather type coaster like this one here, and I was I asked her to make me a second one, and so she did, and she put it back on the coaster. And then we were just talking, I took a sip of it, and the coaster stuck to the bottom of my glass, fell on my favorite silk tie. Okay.
Ah.
Then it fell on my jacket, on my pants, on the cocktail table, and on our carpet. And it left a, a stain on my tie I couldn't get out from the dry cleaner. So, and I said to my daughter, I said, I've been doing this air pollution control stuff for 55 years, and this has always been a pet peeve of mine
Hmm.
because I've had these coasters fall on me before, and I'm going to solve that problem. And so thereabout, when we got home from her house, I started making hand drawings of it, and then I sent it over to my chief engineer, who's a friend of mine. I said, Tony, put this on AutoCAD for me. And so we did. That was October 23, and then by January of 24, we had it to the patent office, and the attorney searched the patent for me, make sure I was not impinging on anybody else's patent. And so it was that nobody had anything like this. And so by March of that year, we had patent pending. And just this year, we got the final 20-year utility patent on it. And that's in the United States. And we have international patent pending everywhere in the world.
So how do you make a coaster, Bob, that doesn't stick to the glass?
Well, it's engineered, Joe. It's
Okay.
engineered. And the way I came up, I said, the key is you got to have a coaster that does its job.
Mm.
And the purpose of the coaster is obviously to absorb or contain the condensate. So what this coaster does, there's a grid on top here, and between each grid, vertical and horizontal, there's a 1 millimeter semicircle that's cut into each grid member. And those are called capillaries. Okay. So when I put my drink on that and the condensate is running down the drink, it goes in, hits one of these horizontal vertical bars, and then the condensate rolls over into the capillary, and the capillary causes it to flow down into the absorption pan. Okay. And then you can contain up to 2 ounces of condensate into this pan. Then you just take it and dump it in your sink, throw it in the dishwasher. These are dishwasher safe. They're good for both hot and cold drinks, and they will not stick to your drink. So what I do, I I capture, convey, collect, and contain condensate, so it doesn't get on your clothes, your cocktail table, or your carpet. Solve the problem.
But is your mind continually just trying to solve problems in an engineering fashion?
Well, yeah, I was talking to my wife. My wife doesn't want me doing any more of this crazy
Mm.
stuff, like
Mm.
like the book or the
Yeah.
coaster. But I got to thinking, in the last 5 years as we traveled around the country, I've had two windshields broken because of stones being thrown
Yeah.
up from the
Yeah.
18 wheelers. So I had an idea of how to solve that problem.
Really?
Okay. Yeah. So I called my engineer buddy up in Atlanta and said, "Hey, you're only 65 years old. You're still young. So why don't here's the solution to that problem, and why don't you work on it and let me see your drawing." I hadn't heard back from him yet, but I just did this in the last couple of weeks. I have a solution to the problem, but I don't want to have to go through it. It would be a
Mm.
great it would be a great thing for the insurance companies. It would be a great thing for the owners of all the 18 wheelers, and it would solve the problem of getting your windshield broke when you're riding down the road. Because my wife and I have traveled a lot of miles on the highways on our vacations, and it's a constant problem.
Yeah, I just had mine done recently. Yeah, it's interesting. And so even so after your degree, even when you had all these businesses, I mean, still, if you see a problem, you think, how can I solve that? It's just the way your mind works.
Exactly, exactly. I had an idea of how to do fencing, and I still got the file, but they come out with a better solution with the aluminum fencing, which is electrostatically painted. It's corrosion resistance and all that. So it was a bit. Mine was a steel fence. So theirs is actually a better design. But I've had all kinds of ideas that I keep in my files,
Hmm.
and I just when I see a problem, and I have 9 grandchildren and 6 great grandchildren,
Wow.
and I say to them, hey, talk to your mom, ask what her problems are around the household, help solve her problems.
Wow.
Okay, just think about solving problems, and if you do that, you come up with a solution. That's pretty cool.
What if discipline wasn't about punishment, but about unlocking your best self? I spent 2.5 years writing Discipline for Greatness because discipline changed my life. And I know it can change yours too. This isn't theory. Inside, you'll find real, practical steps you can use immediately to focus better, build stronger habits, reduce stress, accomplish your goals, and bring more balance to your life. Whether you're trying to get healthier, improve your career, or simply feel more control, this book gives you the framework. Start today. Grab your copy of Discipline for Greatness at joeypins.com/book. Thank you. Yeah, because if you're solving a problem, you're working at the customer first. Sometimes some of these engineers are so smart, they're just kind of come up with a solution that there's really not a problem to. But if you kind of start at the problem, okay, well, this actually affects this people. So these people will be interested in pursuing that. That's how you're helping. It's a different angle to approach, but it's really the best way, I would think.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Because I hear it sometimes, we got this great, solution and like, yeah, but I don't have that problem, and I don't know many people that do. It yeah. What's your favorite club in the bag? Your golf club in the bag?
The putter.
Yeah, I know it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Why
if
is
you
golf the fairest professional sport?
well, it's because you have to be honorable, and
Yeah,
you have to tell on yourself if
that's right.
you break the rules.
Yeah.
And if you're a golfer, it comes with the turf. You will tell on yourself because golf is an honorable game,
It sure is.
and you have to be an honorable person to play the game by the rules.
Yeah, and plus, you got to self police, which not a lot of sports. I don't know any that does that. Secondly, is you only get paid if you play well.
That's right.
You make the cut after the weekend, you're guaranteed some money, but you got to play well to get there. There's all these guaranteed contracts in all these sports. There's no guaranteed contracts in golf. There's some sponsor, money for a lot of the golfers. But as far as playing, you've got to play well to make the money.
That's very true. Very true. And And when you think about it, there's approximately 150 uh, professional golfers on the PGA Tour, and of course the Live Tour is, although it's small, they paid an enormous amount of money for those
Yeah.
people playing in that tour. But yes, you're right. In order to make a good living and to get wealthy, like many of the top golfers have done, you have to play very well. And Scotty Scheffler is a good example of it. I mean, he's just number one in the world,
Yeah.
consistent. You know, came in second in the Masters, just came in second in the RBC
He sure did.
Heritage Classic. I mean, he's constantly there, and uh, and there are few people. When you think about 150 PGA professional tour golfers in the entire world,
Mm.
okay, and you know we're approaching 8 billion people in the world, and there's
Yeah.
150 of them that can play golf at that level. That's a pretty small eye of the needle.
Absolutely. Another thing he proves that you don't have to have the standard, typical, prototypical swing. He's got quite a unique one where he slides that back foot and opens the front, but he makes it an incredible impact. And then you have somebody like Rory who has more of the traditional, let's say, swing, a beautiful swing, a
Yeah,
swing in which Tiger tells his own son, "Don't copy my style, copy Rory's." You know,
yeah,
but my point is that everybody kind of peels the onion differently, but still the results that matter, and that's what's important.
exactly. That's exactly, and
So
that's
how
why
did you go ahead?
that's what I say about putting.
Yeah.
I'm not a PGA instructor. I am an amateur golfer, and I got my handicap. I'm a 7 at age 82, and
Wow.
it's largely because of my putting.
I'm a 7 as well, Bob. And the putting, I heard you say, so there's 18 holes, you make 2 putts a hole, that's 36 putts, that's way too many, but quite that could be a good half, of your stroke. So when I'm at the course, boy, especially the young people, all I see them with that driver in their hand, which they probably use on 13 holes, or you use it 13 times, 12 times, 11 times, whereas the putter, the chipping is everything.
That's right. That's right. And here, as you know, Joe, these guys that are on any of the professional tours, they're playing golf 6 days a week.
Yeah.
You know, and us guys that are just amateur golfers, and particularly as you get older, you don't play. I used to play three 18-hole rounds a week and practice on the other 3 days just to
Wow.
make sure I kept getting better. But and that was because I was in retirement and could do that. But most guys play once a week, maybe twice a week to the maximum, and you don't have the skill set or the continued practice that these professionals get. So therefore, using a lob wedge, pitching wedge, or a sand wedge around the green, you can skull that thing. You can hit it fat. I mean, you can mess up with it. But I can say this: if I'm within 15 yards of the green and there's no obstructions, I know I can use my Texas wedge better than I can use any other club in my bag because of my quantitative method of putting.
So Texas wedge, of course, is when you putt when you're not on the green to get closer to to get closest to the hole. I play with it. I end up playing a lot, and I sometimes I play with higher handicaps, and they're saying, what am I doing wrong? And I say, well, there's great. I have too much respect for the trainers. I still take lessons every year. Just Tiger Woods had a coach. You
Sure.
have to keep taking. You can't correct when you're on the course. If you're insisting, I'd say pick the smallest target possible and try to hit it. But I mean, the people that kind of constantly kind of self-correct and have all these swing thoughts, and it's a frustrating game. It's a wonderful game, but I love it. Bob, what's the IPF?
That's what I've coined as your individual power factor. Okay. And everybody has their own unique individual power factor because it's simply the biomechanical action of rocking your shoulders when you putt. Okay. And like, for instance, on my carpet down here where I practice during the winter, um, my IPF down here is 11 feet of travel for every 1 inch of retraction with my putter from the ball.
Hmm.
And it's linear. So I can use a 3 inch retraction and putt 33 feet down here in my basement. Okay. My wife's IPF, for example, on this same carpet is 8 feet per inch, and she puts 24 feet per every three when she retracts her putter 3 inches. So because of its accuracy, its reproducibility, the fact that it's linear, the system really works because I've tested this system over the last 25 years all over the world. From the old course to Pebble Beach. They didn't let me on the Masters though. I'm still trying to get there.
Yeah, let me know when you get on.
Yeah, I don't think I'll live long enough.
So let's kind of dissect a little bit. You mentioned putting is with the shoulder. So a lot of times we see the high handicappers using their wrists and breaking the wrist. And we know that we want to lock those wrists and we want to, keep it all, use the bigger and keep it all in the shoulders. I heard one instructor say, kind of like the trunk of an elephant, slap your hand down and or a big grandfather clock. And it's the rocker at the bottom. Look at it that way, where you're using your shoulders to actually make the connection. So you're saying in the IPF that if you bring the putter back 1 inch from the ball and then strike it, it goes a certain amount of feet every time, depending on some factors.
Correct, correct. And the game of putting is a friction force event.
Mm.
Okay, you have a if you're putting on bent grass greens, there's no grain, so you can putt in either direction. The ball will go the same distance for the same retraction. Then you've got the fringe, you got the fairway, and you've got the first cut of rough. And each one of those surfaces have a different friction factor. And way I approach the game with my quantitative method putting, I go to the course about 30 minutes before I tee off, and I will go practice my putting first. I then may go over to the range for 5 minutes and hit a driver and a 7 iron or something like that just to loosen up. But I spend most of my time on the practice putting green before I go out, and I determine the speed of the green, the speed of the fringe, the speed of the fairway, and the speed of the first cut of rough, and I write that on my scorecard. And then when I go out on the course, if I get in a situation where I'm in the first cut of rough right off the green, I know how to quickly arithmetically figure it out and know how far to retract that putter to put that ball within 3 to 5 feet of that hole. And sometimes I put it in.
Wow. Now, if you see the pros, there's some other factors there. How about the ball? We know that there's softballs like the Pro V1. There's harder ones. There's like the noodle and things like that. That can come into play. The stimp of the actual green, but I guess you determine that when you do your practicing in the beginning of the round or before the round. Are you always using the same ball?
No, well, I usually have a sleeve of balls that I take 3 balls out, just like when you're doing the stimp meter.
Yeah.
They use 3 balls and they put it on the stimp meter and they put it in the notch and they lift it up and 3 balls roll out. And if they're within 2 feet of each other, they take the average of those two, and that's your speed of the green for the day. Same concept, but that's a qualitative method of putting. But that's what got in my head when I started
Mm.
figuring out, hey, can I create a quantitative method of putting that works? And because my putting was so bad, Joe, I was putting. I took up the game in 1996, and I got really pretty good with the 13 clubs. But that 14th club, the putter was killing me.
Mm.
I was putting between 40 and 44 putts
Oh.
a round.
Oh.
I had three or four putts during a round of golf, you know, and
Oh.
I never had a one putt unless I got within a couple feet of the hole. So with that being said, I had a bunch of friends that were good golfers, and I called them up and said, "Hey, what do I do?" Well, nobody had an answer except that you just got to practice, 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 and I agree with
Mm.
that.
Mm.
But that with all that being said, my methodology of creating this quantitative method started with Edward Stimpson and his stimp meter developed in Oakmont in 1935 after the U.S. Open. Okay. However, the USGA didn't adopt it until 41 years later.
Really?
And that's correct. Yeah. So anyway, that's how I got the idea. I said, that's a relative thing. If I could take that relativity and make it quantitative and reproducible, then I'd have something. Well, it took me a long time. Being an engineer, you got to be sure that what you put in print is correct,
Mm.
And I took a long time doing it. My wife was very helpful because she let me re- redo my putts on lots of green ones we were playing together to see if it was reproducible. And when I saw that it was reproducible, I shot an 86 at the old course in Scotland, shot an
Whoa.
88 at Pebble Beach, and it was largely due to my putting. Okay, and so consequently, I played a lot of great courses around the world, and I found that's what's neat about my method. You can go to any course. Your home course, you know what the greens are going to be like most of the time,
Sure.
you know. But if you can go to any course in the world using this method, and you can play that course like it's your home course, get the hour in advance, and you practice the greens and the fringe, the fairway, and the first cutter up, you'll know exactly how to putt that thing. And that, as you say, as much as 50% of the game can rely on your putting.
Yeah, you mentioned the Stimp. I didn't know the gentleman's name was Edward Stimson, but generally when we go to a new course, we say, "Hey, what's the Stimp reading today?" And if if it's above 10, above 11, I say, "Okay, we got to learn how to give that ball a nice kiss." We got to, because it's going to roll right off. It's going to be fast. The greens are going to be faster. So yeah, he has this method where there's three balls and there's a device, and it's really, really, some of the better greens are going to be more, and then. Um, uh, some of the when it's slower, like when they play like in Europe, for example, they play the Ryder Cup, they purposely kind of slow them down a little bit because it's
Yeah.
kind of the American players are so used to it being fast. But you mentioned your wife, and I know she's got more hole in ones than you, and I think she's aiming for more. But when you have that, you say 1 inch back or 2 inches back, and it determines. How about elevation? How about if there's an increase in the elevation or a decrease, or there's some of those factors as well.
Well, that's correct, and that is a little bit of a quantitative guess, to be
Mm,
honest. See, I
mm,
have in my book for various levels of 5 degree, 10 degree, up to 45 degree slope.
I see.
I add, for instance, if I have a 5 degree slope for my IPF, I add 1 inch of retraction for that putt.
Wow.
Okay, for five, and if I've got a 5 degree downward slope, I remove 1 inch from my putt to account for the downward slope. So there's a quantitative
Hmm.
method for the upward and downward and the undulations. If I have an undulation where the slope going up and the slope going down are even, then that's a zero correction. Okay. So I do account for it, but it's not exact. But I'll tell you
Right.
one thing, it's a whole lot better than having to
Right.
guess at it.
That's right.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? So
Right.
I remember once hearing a tip about you mentioned the Texas wedge, or you're putting, off the green, kind of in the rough a little bit. You get the distance of the pin, let's say it's 6 feet from the rough, and you kind of double it, pretend the pin's that much further so you can add that much pressure to the ball to get it through. There's all these little sayings around the course, and uh, who knows what's true and what's not. How do you stop the decel, Bob?
How do you stop the decel?
So when you're
Well,
coming back for that 1 or 2 inches, how do you stop from decelerating your club, or, increasing the speed? Because you got to be very consistent, right? Of that club speed, putter speed.
that's true. And that's what's so key about rocking the
Yeah.
shoulders. And you've got
Mm,
there's two keys to using the quantitative method is be sure you're rocking the shoulders. Be sure when you get back, like for instance, if I have a 3 inch retraction, I come back maybe 3 or 4 inches, waggle my putter,
mm.
okay, waggle it, but I don't. I make sure that when I get ready to proceed forward, I get it to 3 inches, and I make sure that rocking shoulders, I hit through the ball and
Uh,
don't allow myself to decelerate. And that's one of the keys when you practice this. You have to be sure you're rocking your shoulders, and driving through the ball with your putter. Do not decelerate because that messes everything up.
It sure does. We know that in chipping as well. We see that far too often in chipping and in the short game. And then as far as, side swiping the putt, right to left or left to right, going, or hitting it straight on, is that a factor as well? Because some people come inside the out, some people come
Yeah.
straight back.
Well, my method is strictly come straight back and hit straight through.
I see.
My wife actually cuts her putts.
Yes.
Okay, and yet even with her cutting methodology, which she's been used her whole life, and
Right.
she's been, believe it or not, she's been playing golf for 55 years,
Wow.
and she cuts her putts, but it's uniform, it's consistent, and she can still use the IPF to do it because she comes back and she cuts her putts, and I always look at her putter when I'm watching from the other side. And say, I can't believe her ball
Right.
goes in that direction, but it does, it
It
does.
does. It
And she,
does.
as you say, she's had 2 hole-in-ones, and I've had 14 balls within 13 inches, but never a hole-in-one.
Well, you've counted how many. Yeah, that is the wonderful thing about golf, how you can have such different swings and different ways of doing it, but everybody gets the ball in the hole, and there's been some really odd swings on the PGA tour, and but it's part of the beauty of the game. How about reading greens, Bob? Any tips on that? We saw this
Well,
weekend, you saw Fitzgerald. He actually lies down, goes right down there to see the putts.
well, I'm still an amateur, and I'm not betting big bucks on my game. So I tell you, I keep it pretty simple, Joe. But I do what I think. If we're playing, like my wife and I play in couples tournaments in
Sure.
June into October every year. So when I go and play in these tournaments, I look at the ball from behind the ball, and then I walk on the other side of the hole
Yeah.
and look from the ball, and then I look from the side direction to see that elevation change. And I personally have found that the plumb bobbing method works for
Huh.
me as far as determining the way that the ball is going to flow. And I also keep in my head the ball travels like if I was took a bucket of water and drained it on the course and watched the water flow. So
Mm.
my idea is plumb bob, water flow, see the ball from both directions, and look at the ball from the side, and then establish what your retraction distance, and then make sure you rock your shoulders and hit through the ball. And I will say this: 95 plus percent of the time when I do that, my ball was within 3 to 5 feet of the cup, and 99% of the time I make my putt for a two putt, and
Wow.
about 5% of the time I make a one putt.
Hmm. You mentioned plumb bob. Are you using two fingers or are you using a shaft?
I'm using the shaft.
So explain what that means to people.
Well, I mean, my putter is a pipe putter, and it's pretty heavy because of the pipe on the end of it. And so I hold my putter by the handle,
Right.
and then I focus on it by closing my
You center
uh,
the ball.
on the center of the ball. That's
Yep.
correct. And then with my governing eye, I close the other eye, watch my governing eye, and then I see where the cup is regarding the center of my ball. And of course, if the cup is left of the center of my ball, then I know the putt's going to break from right to left. If the cup is on the right side of that shaft, then I know the ball is going to break from left to right. And then I think about how would water flow if I dumped it right where my ball is, and then using that water flow, having looked at both sides of the cup, looked at the side, I know in my mind exactly where I'm going to hit that ball.
Wow. And before you get up to the ball, before you putt the ball, you already know how you're going to hit it. When you stand over it, your mind's already made, correct?
Exactly.
Yeah.
See, that's what's cool about my method. When I come to the green or near the green, if my ball's near the green, I have a plan of action.
Hmm.
And when you have a plan of action, you have confidence. And when you have confidence, that equates to accuracy. And many times when you got that confidence plan of action and accuracy, you get a good score.
What's worse, Bob, a bad read or a bad putt?
I don't like either one of them.
I don't either. I don't either. I don't either. If it's your home course, I get upset if it's a bad read. I should, because in my course, don't what do they say? Don't learn, memorize, or something like that, right? I should know my greens pretty darn well at this point.
Yeah.
But of course, a bad putt is there's no excuse for that.
Well, we're human beings, and sometimes, even with the greatest plan, you might strike that ball unlike you wanting to.
Yeah, sometimes we get so caught up in the cut and how it's going to break. You hear this, you say you forgot to hit it, right? Meaning you didn't even get it there, because you so concerned on how it's going to break. Bob, is there something that you believed in firmly, let's say like 10 years ago, solidly believed in that you no longer believe now?
Well, yes. I believed 10 years ago that it wasn't the technology of the clubs, it was strictly the club, the, the player,
The player.
and not the club technology. And my wife said to me back in 2000, Christmas of 2023, you've had your ping zangs and your Callaways for 20 years.
Oh my.
Why don't you buy some new clubs? They're going to help your game.
Yes.
I was losing distance because I was getting older. I said, honey, nah, it's not the clubs, it's a club E,
Right.
He said, no. The technology out there is great. You need to try it. So Ozzie Smith was a St. Louis Cardinals great guy, and
great guy.
He was a member out of St. Albans when we were out there, and so I heard him advertising golf discounts and new clubs, and he got his clubs there, and so I went out there to get fitted, and this guy Ken, he's a great guy. He fitted my clubs, and I bought a whole complete set, metals and irons, and I kept my own putter because I love my Nick Vent pipe putter, and I've had it for years. So anyway, for example, I was hitting my 7-iron with my ping zings about 100. I had dropped down to 125 to 130 yards. And then I got my new Callaways with the new technology. Now I'm hitting my 7-iron 145 to 150.
Amazing.
I'm getting 20 yards additional out of every club in my bag now.
And the sweet spot is larger.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. Very forgiving.
Very forgiving.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The technology has come a long way.
So I really have had a big change, and I've shot finally, after all these years, on July 13th of last year, I shot a par round.
Good for you, shot even.
Yeah.
We think as an engineer, Bob, you would kind of respect the engineering of the newer clubs and the technology. I guess you didn't.
Well, I always thought it was the player, not the clubs.
Right.
But I was wrong.
There's a lot of truth in that. In that. You see guys constantly buying new drivers and, but 10 to 15-year-old clubs, that's a tough one too. Yeah.
I love my ping zings. I had a hard time parting with them.
Yeah. Is there a question, Bob, you wish more people asked you?
Well, I've never thought much about that, Joe, but I think that, as you know, because I wrote this book about putting, I strongly believe that putting is something that everybody needs to practice more. I don't care what your skill set is. If you practice putting more, and like I say, as you said earlier in our discussion, putting can be as much as 50% of the game, but if it is, you're not having a really good game. Okay, but if it is 50% of the game, do you know anybody that practiced putting 50% of the time?
No way.
That's right. So my comment to every new golfer, even a experienced golfer, is if you're having trouble with your score, just practice your putting more. more, more, and more. And the game, as you know, the secret to golf is practice, practice, practice.
Bob, I'm trying to figure. You're an engineer. You're an engineer at heart. You're educated in it. Your business is surrounded by it. You're solving problems with engineers. The whole art versus science question. Do you get a point when you're making a decision? Do you ever use your gut? There's different kind of golfers out there. There's the ones that just kind of bring everything together, bring the stats, the weather, the wind, the conditions, the position, pin position, etc., and then choose a club. But do you ever ask your gut as like a last resource or a beginning resource?
I do, Joe, and I'll tell you when I do that. If it's late in the day and I'm on the 16th, 17th, or 18th hole, and I'm running out of gas,
Yeah.
okay,
You'll club
uh,
up.
and well, if I for my putting,
Ah,
if I'm 15 feet off the green, instead of stepping that putt off or shooting it with my rangefinder, I have had enough experience with the methodology that I use. In my gut, I say I know how far that thing
I
is,
say.
and I don't go through the arithmetic to quantify the putt. I just hit it, knowing if you do things enough repetitions, you become good at it, and that's what I do. Because when I get really tired, I get lazy.
Of course, fatigue sets in. The other thing about golf people don't realize. And does that translate to just regular life, Bob? When you're making decisions on other things, do you trust your gut often?
Well, I do. I mean, I've got a pretty bad back, and the doc wants to do a 6 hour operation on my
Ooh,
back, and I'm
ooh,
not. I'm taking shots in my back right now. I'm going to
ooh.
continue down that road until they don't work anymore. But
Mm,
yeah, at my age, you don't want to do a 6 hour operation. That's
right.
that's that's high risk.
Want to show your love for discipline, inspiration, and the Joey Pinz podcast? Now's your chance. Introducing the brand new Joey Pinz merch store, where style meets discipline. Choose from premium apparel, cozy hoodies, stylish hats, durable bags, and your new favorite coffee mug, all featuring the iconic Joey Pinz logo. Perfect for podcast fans, discipline enthusiasts, or as unique gifts for friends and family. Every purchase supports the Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations podcast, helping us continue to inspire greatness and promote positive change. Visit joeypins.com/store today and wear your discipline proudly. Joey Pinz merch. Wear it, share it, and live it. Yep, yep. So, Bob, I started my business in the 90s. I'm a little bit younger than you, and was working way too hard, 14, 16-hour days. You're no stranger to this. And I was in my 20s. I thought I was invincible, right? So I'm putting my health and my, exercise in the back seat. Next thing I know, I'm in front of the doctor. She tells me I'm at 340 pounds. So I had gained all this terrible amount of weight. I knew I was getting big, drinking too much soda and late night snacks, and it's just terrible. But she says to me, if you don't lose this weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate. So scared the life out of me. So, I'm driving home, punching the steering wheel. I can abuse myself all I want, but I've got this family now, right? I've got to stick around for them. Next 6, 7 months, lost about 120 pounds, and I kept it
Wow.
off. These are lifelong decisions, right? You can't do this temporarily. You can't look at it as a finishing line. You've got to keep going with this. So when I tell people this, they say, what's your secret? What you do? And I always say, it's just discipline, right? Focus, motivation, routine, all of what I think is under discipline. How does discipline play a role in your life, Bob Labbe?
Well, I've always been very structured and very disciplined. You know, and I think you learned that from your mom and pop.
Hmm.
My dad was a fireman, and he had a kind of a military mindset about him. My mother was very much into education and wanting to get always strive to do better and better. And between those two parents, I had great parents. Okay, I wish everybody could have as great a parents as I had, because they kept pushing me in the right direction. And my dad was a great athlete, and yet my mother didn't want to get into any of our kids to get into athletics because the results back in the 40s and 50s didn't provide you the kind of financial results they have today. So we're pushed into education, and so that creates, engineering is a very structured mindset,
Yes.
and you kind of stay between the lines, so to speak, in engineering, and that kind of translates to your personal life too. You stay very structured, and that's the only thing I can say is that parents, education, knowing I wanted to be successful, and not just financially, but I wanted to feel like I achieved. And writing this book is one of the most exciting things I've ever done in my life because I never thought I'd ever write a book.
Wow.
But I wanted to write this book because I wanted the 30 million golfers in the United States and the 300 million golfers worldwide to know there is a quantitative method of putting that can make you a good putter. And you know what, Joe? It even works for miniature golf
That's right.
because
What you
I'm a
said.
very competitive person, and even when I play miniature golf, I want to win.
Yeah, me too. What motivates you, Bob, these days?
Well, I've got a bunch of great kids
Yeah.
and grandkids and great grandchildren, and watching them grow up and seeing if I can be participatory and giving them some advice. My grandson just pitched a 3 inning perfect game last night, age
Whoa.
16. So I love to watch these kids perform, and they keep achieving. And I try to keep. We had a little conversation, my wife and I, with our grandson on Saturday, and we've shared some of our ideas. And this kid has really got his head screwed on straight, and he's going forth. He's a great football player and a great baseball player. He's just a great athlete, and he's a good student as well.
That's wonderful. So, given that motivation, sounds like legacy. How do you measure success?
Well, I think success, of course, is it's kind of an adage for those people. My first thing, I'm a Christian. Okay. Secondly, I'm a Catholic. Thirdly, I'm a family man. Okay. And those three things are the most important things in my life.
Hmm.
Okay. I got a great wife. I got a great family, and my measure of success is having the leadership in that family and doing a good job. And I think I'm doing that.
Absolutely wonderful. Bob, I was so excited when we set this up. Love talking about golf. Love talking to engineers like yourself and just how your mind works. It's really, really interesting. BobLabbe.com, BobLabbe.com is where you can find the coasters and the book, correct?
Well, the BobLobby.com takes you to my book, the coasters of the ultimate coasterco.com.
Okay.
Okay, you can get both of those on Amazon. You can get my book at Barnes and Noble and in any electronic Walmart, et cetera, any website you can get it at. But the best place to get it is Amazon, very honestly, because you get the best price.
Right.
Okay, and free delivery if you're Prime. Okay, so yeah, BobLobby.com for the book and Ultimate Coaster Co. for the coaster.
Bob, thank you so much for your time. Really enjoyed the conversation. You be well. I hope one day we get to meet and have a cup of tea.
That would be great. I'll see you at the Masters.
That'll be even better. Thank you, Bob.
If I hook up with Augusta National, I'm going to ring you up and we'll go play together.
Oh, I will hold you to that. I will hold you to that. Sounds great. Thank you, Bob. Be well.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for having me, Joe.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.